Hello, friends. Welcome back to HR Payroll Australia. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe because on this channel, we talk about payroll the way it actually feels in real life practical, honest, and super relevant to Australia. Now, picture this you're at a family dinner, and someone says, "So in payroll, you just click a button and everyone gets paid, right?" Then you chill for the rest of the month and you smile, maybe you laugh. But inside, you're thinking, if only you knew what sits behind that one click. Because in Australia and New Zealand too, payroll isn't a simple button. It's more like a control room with 100 screens flashing at once. One screen is wages, one is tax, one is super, one is awards, one is leave, and one is compliance deadlines, and they're all connected. Payroll might look smooth from the outside, like a calm lake, but underneath it's moving like a fast river. The truth is, payroll is one of the most critical functions in any organization. When payroll is right, people feel secure, bills get paid, trust stays strong, and the business stays compliant. When payroll is wrong, it's not just oops, it can become underpayments, overpayments, angry employees, reputational damage, audits, back pay calculations, penalties, and months of cleanup. So today I'm going to explain payroll in a way that makes sense, even if you're new. And I'll also add a few important things that every payroll professional in Australia should have on their radar. When I explain payroll, I like to break it into three big pillars, like a three-legged stool. If one leg is weak, the whole thing wobbles. The three pillars are Australian legislation, payroll systems and software, and the teamwork between HR, finance, and payroll. Let's start with the first pillar, legislation, because this is where the pressure really comes from. Imagine you're driving a car and the road rules keep changing, but you still have to reach your destination on time, every time. That's payroll compliance in Australia. On one side, you have Fair Work. Think of Fair Work like the referee for employee pay and conditions. Fair Work sets and enforces minimum workplace entitlements, and payroll must match the rules in real pay runs, not just on paper. And in recent years, the consequences of getting pay wrong have become much more serious. For example, Fair Work has explained that intentional underpayment can be treated as a criminal offense from 1st January 2025. So if you imagine payroll as a numbers job, zoom out. It's also a compliance job, a risk job, and sometimes it feels like a legal job too. On the other side, you have the Australian Taxation Office, ATO. Picture the ATO as the engine room for tax reporting and super reporting. Payroll has to handle payee withholding, year-to-date balances, end-of-year finalization, and importantly, reporting through single-touch payroll, which is the system many employers use to report salary and wage information to the ATO through their payroll software. And it's not just federal bodies either. In Australia, payroll often touches state-based requirements too, like payroll tax and workers' compensation, which can feel like juggling different rule books depending on where your employees work. Now, here's a huge upcoming change that adds even more timing pressure: payday super. Picture superannuation going from a quarterly rhythm to a payday rhythm. The ATO explains that the Australian government announced that from 1st July 2026, employers will be required to pay superannuation guarantee at the same time as wages. Australian Taxation Office and Fair Work has also published guidance that from 1st July 2026, employers need to pay super contributions at the same time they pay wages, with the ATO responsible for implementing the new rules. So if you're in payroll, you can already feel what that means: tighter time frames, more frequent processing, and less room for delay. Because payroll doesn't just have to be accurate, it has to be accurate fast. Now let's jump to the second pillar, software and payroll systems. Imagine buying the best car in the world, but nobody sets up the brakes properly. That's what payroll software is like when it isn't configured correctly. For smaller businesses, you'll often see tools like Xero or QuickBooks. They're flexible and cost-effective. For larger organizations, you might see heavy systems like SAP, ADP, Chris21, and others, where implementation can take months and the configuration can become a whole project on its own. But here's the key point. Software doesn't do payroll. People do payroll. The system only follows the rules you set inside it: your pay items, your award interpretation, your leave rules, your overtime, your allowances, your salary packaging, your termination calculations, your bank files, and your reporting setup. And this is where complexity explodes. Some companies have one award or one agreement, but others have many. Imagine one organization running 15 to 20 different EBAs or awards, each with different penalty rates, different allowances, different ordinary hours, different overtime triggers, and different leave loading rules. That's not one click. That's like running multiple mini payrolls inside one payroll. Now, the third pillar is the one people underestimate the most: the teamwork between payroll, HR, and finance. Picture payroll as the bridge between people and money. HR sits on one side with employee lifecycle events, and finance sits on the other side with budgets, cost centers, and reporting. And payroll is right in the middle, making sure it all lines up. Here's what that teamwork looks like in real life. HR is usually feeding payroll the employee changes: new starters, terminations, promotions, contract changes, part-time to full-time changes, allowances, and leave approvals. Imagine HR as the people pipeline. If the data entering that pipeline is wrong, payroll will look wrong. Employee relations or IR teams are often involved when there are awards, EBAs, disputes, interpretations, and compliance risk. Imagine them as the rule interpreters in the background, helping translate workplace conditions into payroll logic. Finance and accounting care about where the wages land. Cost centers, project codes, departments, accruals, journals, and month-end reporting. Imagine finance as the dashboard, making sure payroll numbers make sense in the company's financial story. And payroll sits in the center like the conductor of an orchestra, because even if every instrument is great, if one section plays the wrong note, everyone hears it. This is also why payroll professionals carry so much responsibility and why attention to detail matters. A tiny setup error can become a silent problem for years. Picture one employee accidentally set up under the wrong award or the wrong pay category or the wrong hours per week. It might not show up immediately, but over time, it can turn into long-term underpayments or overpayments. And then you're doing back pay calculations, corrections, and explanations. And payroll isn't only about weekly or fortnightly pay. It's also about the tricky moments: terminations, redundancies, unused annual leave, long service leave, and bonuses and commissions, salary packaging, deductions, and sometimes garnishes. The kind of situations where one mistake can create a big employee impact. So if someone asks you, "What do you do in payroll?" you can tell them, "Payroll is the job of making sure people are paid right, paid on time, and paid in a way that keeps the organization compliant across fair work obligations, ATO reporting, and changing rules like payday super." Now, before I wrap up, here's one important reminder, especially if you're new to payroll. Don't be afraid to treat payroll like a profession, not an admin task. Read updates, stay curious, ask questions, document processes, and build checklists. Think of checklists like your seatbelt. You don't notice them when everything's fine, but they save you when things get messy. All right, friends, that's it for today. If you work in payroll, HR, or finance, tell me in the comments, what's the most stressful part of payroll for you? Compliance, systems, or deadlines? And if you want, I can make the next video breaking down who does what in payroll: HR versus payroll versus finance versus compliance, with real examples. If this helped you, subscribe to HR Payroll Australia and share it with someone who still thinks payroll is just one click. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.